Next on Life Focus.
He lost control of his truck, swerved over my lane. The 9 wheels of the truck rolled over my car.
Don Piper died instantly.
They did all the tests they had at their disposal and determined that I was deceased.
But in reality, his new life was just beginning.
I was driving along a highway one moment, and the very next moment, a fraction of a second, I'm actually standing at the gates of heaven.
90 minutes later, a passerby witnesses his miraculous return to life.
I think his actual words were, "The dead man is singing." Well, that's not something that, you would typically hear. And so, you just think, it's air escaping from the lungs. We've checked him, we've run all the tests. We're medical professionals. We know a dead body.
Today on Life Focus, the man who went to heaven and back.
Heaven is a buffet for the senses. It is a sensory explosion. All the sights that we have here, that we see. If I'm standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon and I'm looking at the sunset, I'm thinking, this is just awesome. Heaven is 1,000,000 times more beautiful than that.
Hello, welcome to Life Focus. I'm Dan Meyer. For over 30 years now, the medical and scientific communities have been trying to prove or disprove the validity of near-death experiences. Do afterlife encounters really happen, or are they just a figment of imagination, perhaps a biological response to trauma? 90 minutes after paramedics declared him dead, Don Piper of Pasadena, Texas, came back to life. Today, he'll tell you that his near-death encounter was the most real experience he has ever had. Karen Coy has the story.
I was fascinated with the whole prospect of near-death experiences, but very skeptical.
In the late 1980s, Don Piper, a busy pastor and father of 3, might have been cynical when people described their experiences after being declared clinically dead, but he never doubted the reality of heaven.
I knew it was breathtakingly beautiful. I knew that it was eternal. I just didn't see how a person could really die and go to heaven and come back and talk about it.
But all that changed one rainy day in 1989. It was here at the Veterans of Foreign Wars Memorial Bridge north of Houston that Don Piper died.
People need to know that heaven is real, and I had a chance to see that.
His chance came after attending a pastors' convention at Trinity Pines Conference Center, several hours north of Houston. The journey began with a small but fateful decision.
That day I paused at the gate and really just decided to go a different route.
Don's new route headed south on Texas Highway 19.
It was raining, cold, the windshield wipers are going.
At 11:45 a.m., he approached the long and narrow Memorial Bridge.
And I couldn't see beyond the end of the bridge. I had a 110-mile-an-hour impact with a big truck. I never saw the truck. There was no reaction time.
The two vehicles collided head-on.
I was driving along a highway one moment, and the very next moment, a fraction of a second, I'm actually standing at the gates of heaven. There was no sense of passing. There was no transition. There was no tunnel.
Don cannot recall the 90 minutes on Earth, but vividly remembers his experience in a more glorious place.
The brilliance of the light, the magnificence of the light is beyond anything I have ever gazed upon here on Earth. It is almost as if everything is alive. It just glistens.
Several other vehicles were involved in the accident. The truck rolled over the top of Don's Ford Escort, crushing his body.
My internal organs had really been crushed. The roof of the car collapsed on my head, and I had been bleeding from the ears and the eyes and the mouth and nose, which were all brain damage signs.
The arm was basically in the back seat. I mean, those were very apparent injuries.
The dash came across both of my legs, just kind of like a guillotine.
A guillotine that crushed his right leg and nearly severed his left leg above the knee.
4 inches of the femur, the largest bone in the human body, was ejected from the car, apparently out the window into the lake because it was never located.
His left arm was also nearly severed and missing several inches of bone.
Eventually 4 ambulances arrived. They ran EKGs, they did all the tests they had at their disposal, and determined that I was deceased. A policeman got a waterproof tarp out of his squad car, came over to my vehicle so no one would have to see what I looked like in the car. It was quite awful to look at.
The news of the accident reached Don's wife, Eva, but she was not told the accident was fatal.
There's been a wreck, and Don's been hurt. That's all they knew at that point in time. And the thing I remember most about that is just a very real sense of peace just covered me from my head to my toes. And I knew he was going to be okay.
But medical personnel at the scene believed differently.
They actually phoned for the county official, a justice of the peace, to come to the scene to sign documents which would allow the body to be transported to a mortuary.
Until this man came to the scene.
And I was a stranger to him.
The late Dick Honorecker, seen here in a previously recorded interview, was also on his way home from the pastors' conference and stopped to help.
Very candidly, it was as though I was compelled to stop and to pray for him. The Lord just impressed on me very emphatically, very urgently, that I was to pray for him.
So Dick approached one of the officers and said, is there anyone here I can pray for? And he was told no, because the 2 people in the other 2 cars had actually been transported. And I, of course, was deceased. So they said, quite honestly, there is no one to pray for.
But Dick insisted.
And I laid my hands on him and began to pray for him, that there be no internal injuries and there be no head injuries.
At 1:15 p.m., a full 90 minutes after Don Piper had been declared dead, the unbelievable happened.
And I'm hearing a voice behind me. And that voice is the voice of Dick Honorecker.
I began to sing, and all of a sudden I heard him singing with me.
Hearing his own voice singing jarred this survivor back to earth.
I was in utter brilliance in heaven. Now I'm in the dark, and I'm thinking, why is it dark?
His next sensation? Excruciating pain.
It was about to get as sorrowful and dreadful and painful as what I had just experienced was glorious and majestic.
A horrific car crash killed Don Piper. He says in a flash of an eye, he ascended to heaven, a beautiful, peaceful, and loving place. A place where he saw indescribable sights and sounds. But when he came back to life 90 minutes later, he was left with a severely crippled body and agonizing pain, and more questions than answers. Did he really go to heaven? If so, why did he come back? For months, Don didn't even share his experience with anyone.
Every time my heart would beat, it would be like hitting my limbs with a hammer.
Turned away from 2 local hospitals, Don felt every bump and shake during the nightmarish ride to Houston.
It was just the most excruciating, powerful, throbbing pain that I didn't even know you could feel pain like that.
Don finally arrived at Memorial Hermann Hospital's trauma center.
My internal organs were intact.
Doctors determined Don amazingly did not have any brain damage or head injuries.
And even though my other injuries are cataclysmic, those 2 life-threatening experiences are no longer in existence. They have been prayed away by a man on a bridge under a tarp.
When I saw him in the emergency room, he was being evaluated by numerous other doctors in addition to me.
It soon became evident to Dr. Thomas Grider, an orthopedic surgeon, if they didn't take drastic measures immediately, Don may not survive.
We had to find a way to either take off the leg, or there was a new device that had not been used very often to save the leg.
The experimental device, called an Elizarov frame, had rarely been used in the United States.
Because we have to put it into the leg through the muscles, is extremely painful, and that's why it's only used with a great deal of reluctance.
Metal wires and rods force the bone to grow while keeping the surrounding tissue intact.
The problem with that would be it could conceivably break or fail before the bone healed.
Amputation would be less painful.
He would only need probably one operation, then he'd be done with it, and then we could fit him with a prosthesis to let him get out of bed and start moving.
Eva made the difficult decision to try the Elizarov frame.
There was no guarantee that it would work, but at least Don would have his leg.
If you can imagine taking an ice pick and just kind of burying it into your leg to the bone and then moving around it, I had 30 of those on my left leg, and I had 12 of them on my left arms.
There are many times while Don was recovering that he was angry with me for giving that permission, because it was just excruciatingly painful.
I never went to sleep for a year. I just, I fought it, and I strained, and then I would find myself unconscious. I just passed out.
Ultimately, Don endured 34 painful surgeries.
I wanted to go to heaven on a minute-to-minute basis. I never wanted to come back from heaven. I still would prefer to be there than here.
His yearning turned into heavy depression.
That was my scariest time. That was when I guess my faith did waver a little bit, because Don wasn't trying. And that's so unlike him. He's so determined, and he had quit.
It was a dark period, a very, very dark period. Two things really seemed to overwhelm me, a sense of what I saw and lost, and a sense of what I might ever do that mattered.
It was just too much for him. And I'd fuss at him, I'd cajole, I'd plead, I'd whatever. And he didn't want it. He would just literally turn his head. He wouldn't talk to me. And that was rough. That was very hard.
And people were nice, and they were thoughtful, but no one would ever make the statement, "You're going to be fine. You're going to walk again."
For a year and a half, Don kept his heavenly experience to himself.
I didn't want to share it. I felt like it was a sacred secret.
My advice to him was, you're going to have to be comfortable with sharing this experience. I would suggest you pick a couple people that you know, that you trust.
Reluctantly, Don trusted in David Gentiles, his best friend for over 30 years.
I guess he was just kind of seeing if I would laugh at him or say he was crazy or whatever.
A small part of it probably had to do with the fact that I felt if I shared it, people would think that I just had lost it.
Don slowly revealed more details of what he witnessed during the 90 minutes his body lay lifeless.
I heard angels more than saw them. And what I could hear was the beating of their wings. And so it was just an awesome presence of the angels, and they're everywhere. In heaven, you can hear thousands of glorious songs. You hear them all at the same time, and there is no chaos.
Frankly, to have someone I knew sitting across from me saying, well, and I saw this, and it looked this color, and this was the sound, it was a little freaky.
Don cannot forget the moment he reached Heaven's Gate.
There was a parting of the crowd and revealing, the street, and so I began to move forward. And it was becoming obvious that it's time for me now, having been welcomed, to enter. I'm not sure we walked. I know that sounds very strange. Let's just say we moved.
They moved toward the gate on what Don says appeared to be a street of gold.
The closer you get to the gate, the brighter it gets, and inside the gate is an utter brilliance. I was in the presence of God, and I would never have to suffer pain again. I would never have to be weary again. I would never have to worry again.
But as Don crossed the threshold, he paused.
That pause was my moment to return. The culmination of all those prayers on earth was realized at that moment, as God, in His infinite wisdom, decided it was not my time and sent me back.
Until Don shared his experience, Eva was hurt that Don wished he had not survived the accident.
I was not real happy with him. And so when when I heard about the heaven experience, it was like, oh, now I get it. Because if you've been there, why would you want to be back here?
Did Don really visit heaven, or was it just a figment of his imagination?
I deal with critics of the near-death experience, with skeptics about the phenomenon. I have to deal with my own skepticism about it as well, because I don't know what causes these experiences.
Dr. Bruce Grayson, a psychiatrist with the University of Virginia, has studied near-death phenomena for over 30 years.
Doctors and nurses are coming to be more and more impressed with the fact that these things are really happening to their patients and really have an important impact on their patients' lives and on their health care.
Important events with no real medical explanation. But Grayson says he cannot deny the millions who say they've had encounters with the other side.
In the near-death experience, people's minds separating from body, people communicating with what appear to be deceased loved ones, are all suggestive of something surviving after death.
Don Piper believes it's more than just a suggestion.
My experience in heaven was the most real experience of my existence.
I had an eyewitness account from someone who was very credible to me and trustworthy, and so there was a legitimacy.
I know he's not prone to flights of fancy. He's a very logical, think-it-through person, has always been that way. So when he talks about things that he experienced in heaven, I know that they're real.
As real as heaven is to Don, others who have died and returned describe another place, one that is dark and dreadful.
And they'll say there were screams, there were flames, and there was sulfur. It was an agonizing, horrifying, stupefying place, and it's really, you could see it on their face. And then inevitably they will say, the reason I'm telling you this is because I want you, when you share, to let people know hell is real too.
Don says that he had an incredible journey to heaven during those 90 minutes. According to a Gallup poll, he's one of the 5% of Americans who have had a near-death experience. Researchers are still uncertain what exactly happens when the heart stops beating, but they cannot deny the profound impact on those who have them. Karen Coy concludes this report.
People who come back from a near-death experience give differing descriptions of what they went through.
I literally felt myself kind of floating, and I looked and I saw myself on the bed.
Encountering a being of light.
And then you're passing very, very fast through a tunnel. I felt incredible love.
Seeing deceased relatives.
I saw my great-grandmother.
And the light gets brighter and brighter.
Apparently unearthly realm of existence.
Instantly I was out of my body and looking at Earth.
I have never felt more loved, and don't ever hope to.
People will say their sense of time has changed dramatically. Often they will say time ceased to exist in the near-death experience.
Their experiences may differ, but they never forget.
I've talked to people many decades after a near-death experience, and they say invariably that it's like it happened yesterday.
Some wish their memories weren't so vivid.
It was like being in a nightmare and trying to scream. And as hard as you tried to scream, you couldn't get the word, you couldn't get the sound out. And it wasn't a nightmare. It was reality. It was my reality. And I can only say that it was hell.
Several years ago, Sharon Maddox underwent surgery. Under anesthesia, she became aware of herself slipping away to a dark, black place.
The darkness was thick. It was a total enveloping darkness. It was so dark you wouldn't have been able to see the hand in front of your face, is the way I describe it. I experienced gut-wrenching, excruciating pain. It was so unbearable. I don't even have the words to describe how it felt.
According to Dr. Bruce Grayson, a small percentage of people like Sharon do have negative near-death encounters.
Some of these unpleasant experiences are simply a sense of being in a black void with no sense of sight, sound, touch, just being alone for eternity, which can be a terrifying experience.
Near-death experiences may vary from person to person, but Dr. Grayson says one phenomena remains constant.
What I do know is that they are profoundly transformative experiences.
And it's the transformation in a person's attitude, goals, and even personality that fascinates this psychiatrist.
We spend a lot of time in trying to help people make fairly small changes, and here, in the blink of an eye, something happens that totally transforms a person's personality. There's tremendous power there that if we could understand it, we could have some great tools for how to help people.
There's also an urgency about life and death. You know, when you've had a big truck hit you when you're only 38 years old and your life ends, and then you've been given it back, but it's a different life, you're mindful of the fact that we're very fragile.
Spending time with his family is more of a priority now.
Good way to describe that. Yeah.
What do you think about that?
He was always a good family man, but I think he takes more time and more pleasure out of enjoying his family and making sure that we really do spend time together.
You know what? It made me feel right at home because I was home. Heaven is home.
Today, Don travels worldwide to share his story with an eager audience.
I had to find a way to take the mess that I had found myself in and turn it into a message.
If God can resuscitate a dead guy in a red car, he can give you a better life now and a better life in the world to come. Are you ready for that?
How much lingering pain do you still have today?
Quite a bit.
Still in almost constant pain, Don walks with difficulty, and his left arm doesn't turn normally. But more than anything, he yearns for something more.
I have had enormous privileges and joys here in life since I returned. Watched all three of my children graduate from college. I have had the privilege of walking my daughter down the aisle, but I'd rather be there. If you hear in an hour or two, word reaches you here at the church that I've been in a terrible accident and I'm not expected to live, leave me alone. Leave me alone.
Don Piper's experience is a fascinating one that can't be fully explained by science. Although researchers may never be able to prove near-death encounters happen, they are very real for those who experience them. Many of you watching today may have questions we didn't have time to answer. More information on this topic can be found on our website. Thanks for watching. I'm Dan Meyer. We'll see you again next time.
More information about this program can be found online at www.lifefocus.tv. The title of today's program is on the screen.
I saw colors there that simply don't exist here. In the spectrum of light here, if you were to get a prism and look at the spectrum of light, it's unlimited there. And inside, people were moving about. I really wasn't able to see the faces of the people who were inside. And I really only saw people that I knew. So I think heaven is a very active place. The gate is looks like it's constructed out of mother of pearl. It is glimmering. It's almost translucent. Even though it is a very magnificent, firm structure, it's almost like you can see through it. It doesn't move, but because of the light reflecting off of it, it looks alive.
More information about this program or other Life Focus episodes can be found online at www.lifefocus.tv. Pricing and ordering information for a DVD copy of this program are available on our website or by phone at 1-877-908-5433. The title of today's program is on the screen.